You and I both are in this business. We do that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You know, I just think that you know.
It's, you just,
I just think that like
to say, it's an unfair thing to say.
Oh my God, it's Sam Seder.
Oh no, Sam Seder. What a nightmare.
How have you been, Sam, since we ruined Steven Crowder's life together? Nice to see you again.
I've been feeling very badly for him.
Yes, we're all. It's a tragic loss of a great career and so much potential.
Yes, it is. Hey, are we live now?
We are live on the H3 channel, yes.
I wanted to start by sort of apologizing in that I sent you a DM on Twitter 6 months ago or something. I was just going through to find out, and then I just realized you're no longer on Twitter.
Yeah.
So that explains why I didn't hear back.
He may no. Yeah, I didn't see it. I wish I would have, but honestly, I don't know what to do because like I want.
Wait, he's not on Twitter? Who's the guy I've been DMing and sending pictures of myself to on the H3H3 Twitter account?
Get off Twitter, but also it's kind of a pain because Twitter is the way that like I would reach out and speak to most people. But I also don't want to be on a platform that's like owned and perpetuates basically like Nazi shit. So
yeah, this was yes, I understand that.
Yeah,
but I just wanted you to know I did reach out, and it was on me not to realize that. I just assumed you didn't want to respond, but
okay. Well, that's nice to know that you reached out. I appreciate that. And the reason, I mean, obviously, people have been pushing for this conversation. I don't know if you know like the whole lore of it, the background of it.
I don't. I mean, this is all I know is that Hasan reached out to me sometime. I mean, I got in touch with you October 24th, and I said that I was meaning to reach out for a couple of weeks. So I assume it was sometime in early October, and I thought we were just going to do this off air. But my understanding is that. You and he were getting into it, and you felt like because he wasn't Jewish, he didn't have a perspective on this, and that's why he suggested that you speak to me.
No, that is not true. I hope Ethan doesn't forget what sparked this. It was that Hasan wanted to cite literally one minority org in the United States, like as in they were a minority of Jews, called like, what was it, like Jews for Peace or something, Jewish Voice for Peace, that don't represent all Jews. And Ethan was bringing up it was a little ridiculous to cite them, and then Hasan was like, well, let me find a better Jew for you to talk to. But
I don't speak for all Jews, just to be clear.
Right.
I speak for only myself as a in any form.
Well, Sam, allow me to speak for all Jews, if I may, today.
Please.
No, but actually, I mean, that's a total mischaracterization, which is kind of my problem with Hasan, which we can get into if you want. We don't even have to talk about Hasan. But basically, what I told him was that I was citing polling data that shows that about 70 to 80% of diaspora Jews have some kind of positive feelings towards the state of Israel. And he was disagreeing with me. And I mean, this is available by polls, readily available by Pew Research just last month, showing that. And I don't know if you agree with that or not. I can pull it up, but 72% of diaspora Jews have some type of at least positive feelings about the state of Israel. I was stating that fact to him, and he was saying that I was wrong. And I said, who are you to talk about this? I did not say that I only listen to Jewish people, which is a little bit of presumptuous and a little insane.
No, I don't think that's not what I took him to say. But I mean, as long as that's irrelevant to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that I haven't seen that poll. I've seen ones that have said that they have a connection. They feel a connection, either strong or somewhat, which is different than positive per se. So, but regardless, I mean, I think if I don't know your upbringing at all, but I mean, certainly my upbringing.
Destiny, you said Palestinians started the war, and I was just correcting you that it was the Arab states and most of the local Arabs. Palestinians didn't take part. You're wrong. Most of the Arab states joined in 48 after Israel declared independence, but in 47. It was the Palestinians living in places like Jerusalem that started that initial war. The 47 conflict started off as a civil war between Arabs or Palestinians and the Yishuv, the Jewish people there, the pre-Israel people. And then after in 48, I think in June, May, when did Israel declare independence? That's when the rest of the Arab states joined in.
My Hebrew education was, I would say, 1/3 Holocaust. And I'm older. And so this was, in the 70s. 1/3 into the 80s, 1/3 Holocaust, 1/3 Israel, 1/3 Hebrew, Hebrew and Jewish culture. And I certainly feel a strong connection to Israel, but I wouldn't call it positive these days.
Sure. I think what the poll attempts to is basically, if you ask Hasan or a lot of people on the left,
May 14th. Okay.
I think an emotional attachment is the way to describe this. So it's like if you think
I certainly have an emotional attachment, and it's not, but it's not. I wouldn't describe it as positive.
This isn't the one, is it, Dan? There's the one that shows 73% of diaspora Jews. Anyway, it doesn't really matter, regardless. Basically, I want to flesh out my ideas, my thoughts, because I'm being characterized by Hasan and a lot of his cohorts as being, a Zionist, being pro-Israel, being an Israel apologist, being a genocide supporter, being a baby killer, being married to a baby killer, et cetera, right? My wife is Israeli. I don't know if you know that.
Notice he didn't deny it.
So basically, I would like to just take the opportunity to explain my ideas, what I think about Israel, and you can tell me what you think, because apparently I will only listen to other Jewish people. So finally, I can speak to someone whose opinion matters to me. So thank you. As the official sanctioned Jewish man, Sam Seder, everybody. 100% Ashkenazi? You ever taken one of those?
I haven't, but I'm quite sure I have some Sephardic Jewish ancestry too. So I would mix.
That's good.
Vilnius and Hungary, I think.
Good for you. I think that's always a good thing. My friend, I'm 99.3%. So
Damn.
that's my.
All right,
that's where my authority comes from.
I'll take your word for it.
So at any rate, let me start here by showing you a little context.
Oh, let me also just say I got about an hour.
Okay, great.
Well,
I'll just get into it then. Oh, here it is. Not that it matters, but okay, whatever. So let's start here. Let's start with the little icebreaker here. I know we're both fans of Tim Pool. Okay, let's just enjoy this image together. Tim Pool recently at a wedding. And can you see? Can you see that?
Did he get married?
Well, I think he's attending a wedding.
Okay.
And he's very formally dressed, except he appears to be wearing a beanie.
Classy.
I'm aware of his beanie attachment.
Yeah. So I don't know. I thought this was a fine look for our good friend Tim Pool there. Very good.
Nice suit.
Yeah. So well, let me ask you this: what have you kind of like heard about me? Because I mean, I know that your colleagues have an opinion.
I got to be honest with you. I
don't know shit. I don't know anything.
I have not heard much.
I've heard your name.
I have the only thing I really saw that came up in any of my mentions
Hasan
on
begging
Blue Sky,
me to set you
also on
straight.
Blue Sky, is just this issue about talking to me, and I had presumed that was it. But I don't, look, from my perspective, I'm not, and I know that there's been, you mentioned in the email that there's been a lot of grief that you have taken, and I know that other people have also taken grief on all sides of this. And, the personal aspects of this, and, I don't believe that people, I don't actively attempt to deplatform people. I don't think people should do that. I don't think people should be swatted.
I'm not up to on the Sam Seder lore. Are we expecting this to be a good faith convo? I don't know Sam Seder's position on Israel. My expectation would be pretty dumb. However, I seriously doubt he's going to call Ethan like a full-on pro-genocidal Zionist simp. But I don't know. I actually don't know if I've heard Sam Seder talk about Israel much. He probably is like they're. I don't actually know. I don't know if he thinks they're committing a genocide or not. I'm not sure.
Or try to be fired or whatever. Or have CPS sicked on them or any of that. I mean, I just don't think that's appropriate. I mean, I'm more interested in talking about my relationship to Zionism and my perspective on what Israel is doing and
clip. So
what
I've been actually talking about my
oh boy,
I totally agree. Let's just talk about the facts. Let me start by showing you this clip. So I've been actually talking about my feelings on the Israel-Gaza Palestinian dispute situation for a long time. I lived in Israel for 5 years as well when I was with my wife early on. Here's my position right after October 7th, and you can tell me if you have any if you have any comments on any of my positions here. But this was from our episode a few days after October 7th.
Oh no. I bet Hasan phrased this as in like, hey, can you go talk to my friend Ethan from H3H3 because he is like really confused or doesn't understand something. That's probably how Hasan phrased this to Sam Seder. So Sam was like, yeah, I don't have no problem with that. When in reality, I think Ethan is probably looking for Sam to just say like, hey, you don't think I'm like fucking pro-genocide in this clip or anything, right? And now Sam is in this like really weird world probably where he doesn't realize. I wonder if he's realized, yeah, that they're basically both leaning on Sam Seder's opinion here to figure out, does Ethan support genocide or not?
Liars and bad faith weirdos. So here's what I'll say about Israel, okay? Listen, this isn't the first time I've said it, and I'll say it many more times. The cabinet is run by genocidal maniacs, okay? They're led by Netanyahu, who should resign in disgrace and go to prison for being a war criminal, okay? He's made a coalition of the most like radically conservative freaks that don't represent, by the way, the majority of Israelis. And they're hell-bent on genocide, frankly, overtly. They've committed tons of war crimes in Gaza, including the killing of children, obviously, because Gaza is one of the most densely populated places in the world. 50% of the residents are under 18, so when you bomb a building, the chances that you're killing children is pretty much 100%.
There's no way he's going to be in the dark about the situation, right? My understanding is Sam Seder is just very much not like in this like online world of political, slap fighting or all that. It wouldn't surprise me if Sam Seder literally knew fuck all, literally knew absolutely nothing about the ongoing feud between Hasan and Ethan.
Okay? It's fucking barbaric. It's unacceptable. It's disgusting. I've seen videos, I saw videos of Palestinian dads holding his dead, like 5-year-old daughter. I mean, I don't need to watch this part because it just gets a little too emotional. But I mean, so that was my take right after October 7th. And obviously that was coming off the end of me being like I'm an Israeli citizen. The morning of October 7th, me and my wife were up at 3 a.m. as families were calling into news stations from their safe houses, people being burned alive with their families being murdered while on the phone with news. So coming off of that emotional shock, right, was this was my reaction. Now, I don't know if there's something Zionist or pro-Israel I said there, but maybe I don't understand.
I mean, I think much of what you said was true. I'm not sure, frankly, if what we've seen Israel do.
What's worse, Sam Seder or Jimmy Dore? Jimmy Dore is a billion times worse than Sam Seder.
In terms of Gaza, is not broadly supported in Israel. I'm not seeing the body politic. I mean, I was doing a lot of interviews with Israeli reporters earlier in 2023 about the protests against what Netanyahu was doing with the judiciary. And there was a question as to whether Israelis would see that this autocracy that Netanyahu was attempting to sort of impose on the country wasn't an extension of what was happening in places like the West Bank and in Gaza in some fashion, and more so the West Bank at that time. And so I think it's hard to make an argument. And look, I would make it's not a perfect analogy as to what's happening in this country, but when you talk about the Israeli population not having a problem with what's going on in Gaza, I don't see a lot of evidence of that. There's certainly, I would imagine, a percentage of Israelis, and I know some of them who think that Israel should stop its assault there, but I don't think I don't see a lot of evidence that a year and a half later, after you said those things, that this is not the character of the vast majority of Israeli society. I mean, I'm not necessarily convinced that they are as aware. I mean, I've talked to people who have reported in the West Bank, and they said they would go from the West Bank into Israel, and the lack of awareness of what was happening in the West Bank by Israelis was shocking to them. So, I can't say if the Israeli population had a full understanding of what was happening in Gaza, that they wouldn't change their mind. But I don't see a lot of evidence of it.
So, as you touched on, this was made basically before the war started. And I think that the unfortunate, really tragic outcome of the war is how much it's jaded and radicalized, I think, people in Israel. It's really, I think people in Israel feel like isolated. They feel like...
One of the most mind-melting things about this oppressor-oppressee dynamic is it destroys your ability to consider things from another perspective, right? Like, is it true that Israel's, war in Gaza has been pretty insane, that a ton of people have been killed, civilians included, that the Palestinians are paying a massive cost of life and limb and property and everything as well, and economic future opportunity and everything. Yes, this is absolutely true. And is it possible to say that Palestinians are going to be radicalized in the future or are currently radicalized because of current treatment by Israel and everything? Yeah, for sure, that's totally fair. But you can never make that same statement about Israelis. Is it fair that Israelis feel that it's a little bit mindfucky that these people literally came across the border and made videos of them raping and murdering Israelis and celebrating it, and they were on the phones with their parents, bragging about killing Israeli? That's pretty mindfucky as well. It can't just be one side getting mindfucked. We can't keep pretending that only one group of people can be radicalized. It's such a short-sighted and stupid way to approach everything politically.
I mean, the sentiment in Israel is basically that the world wants, the country to disappear.
Yep.
And and obviously, that's a much more nuanced conversation. But the feeling there has has
But I
definitely
mean-
radicalized a lot since the
Yep.
war started. It's gotten a lot worse.
Yep.
And I think, I mean, I think that gets to it to some extent. I mean, you have this wholesale slaughter. You know, I was looking up, we killed in Iraq, you know, depending on what numbers you want to look at.
Sam's
but,
only going to look at it from
you
one
know,
side.
I think it's safe to say directly
It's the
hundreds of
same
thousands
issue.
of people. But even like the number of children that we killed in Iraq, I think has been surpassed by what's happened in Gaza. And I think one of the things that I find shocking is that the sense and look, I experienced this with family members, where the sense that there's a victimization, for instance, let's say on college campus of Jewish students, and I think that to look at what's going on, the totality of what's going on, and to perceive the victims of what's happening here to be the Israeli citizenry or Jews in this country, I think it just blows my mind. I mean,
well, two people can care about two things at once.
It's fuck, dude. Sam is a really, really, really good debater. I don't know if Ethan is going to be able to do this conversation. You just, the one-sided empathy is just such a stupid way to approach a conflict. I feel like it's literally post-World War I world where it's like, let's settle all the blame on one side and see how it goes. And I thought we learned this lesson. It's like, okay, fuck, maybe we need to have a little bit more of a nuanced approach to foreign politics. Maybe it's actually not a good way to solve problems to just blame one side for everything and have absolutely no empathy for the parties involved. But for Israel, I guess we can always make exceptions for the Jews.
Why should people?
Oh, absolutely.
People,
no, absolutely.
People
I
who
agree,
are
but I
uninvolved in the war, if they're being like victimized in a separate situation because of their Jewish identity, that's a problem, don't you think?
Oh, I do, but
and
I
you can
think
care
that,
about
like,
two things. You can't be like, oh, these people are ridiculous for caring about anti-Semitism on college campuses because the war's happening. I mean, both we can care about two things.
100%.
And obviously, one is way worse, right? One is way worse.
But that's the point. I mean, one is way worse than what's happening in Gaza.
But who should tolerate being discriminated against?
That one is way worse. Also, this is another weird oppressor-oppressee thing. Nobody cares. Nobody evaluates world pain like that. Nobody compares their situation, and we all know this intuitively, right? When somebody complains, I can't afford, a home, or I can't afford a car, and it's like, would you rather be a starving child in Africa? Well, no, but that's not my fucking standard of comparison for living. Because if you want to play the comparison game, why the fuck are we talking about Arab death in Israel at all? When we should basically be exclusively focusing on Yemen and Syria.
It's based on their identity, you know what I mean? Like, of course,
Well,
who wouldn't react to that?
I don't think that people are. I don't think that people are being victimized. I mean, certainly, listen, anti-Semitism is real. It was real when I was a kid. There was many times I had pennies thrown at me growing up and playing basketball. I mean, there was a lot of. I've experienced anti-Semitism, but I would put it in the context of like you're a parent, I'm a parent. If my kid is going through something very difficult, it's obviously difficult for me, but it's more difficult for them. And it's a question of prioritizing these things. You can have two thoughts in your head at the same time, but to center oneself or to perceive that one's victimization is sufficient to ignore the
I got to stop you because I don't
He's
think
not saying ignore. No one's saying to ignore.
Well, I mean, I just
have to
said
be mindful of both.
You just presented as the Israeli population feels like they're isolated and this and that.
There's two different separate conversations. There's like the American Jewry who's like, I have nothing to do with that place. And then the Israelis, right? So like when you're talking about,
in terms of the way that you characterized the Israeli feeling, was that they feel isolated, et cetera, and I can understand that, but to not have the first thought of like we are committing, like you say, genocidal acts.
Well, that's going to be cringe.
People want to call it genocide. I don't. Obviously, it's got to be. It's a legal term, but I think that it's colloquially speaking, at the very least, it is a genocide. and to
remember, this is the reason why also that type of propaganda is so effective, and the goal of that type of propaganda, the reason why it's so important to call it a genocide and to talk about apartheid is because these things are thought terminating. They shut down the conversation immediately. What, are you going to defend a genocide? You sure about that, buddy? You're going to sit here and defend that people are being genocided? You want to make this conversation anything but the ongoing genocide? You sure about that? Right?
Not recognize that as the fundamental issue. The first issue, I think, is blinkered. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, it's a little gobsmacking to me.
Well, so I do agree with you that obviously in Israel, people, I think the problem, and just to say on a higher level, I agree with you, like obviously the people in Israel compared to like what's, on October 7th, they were victims. After everything that's happened, obviously whatever they've suffered pales in comparison to the mass destruction and like wanton death of civilians in Gaza and what's happening in the West Bank too, lots of awful stuff. That being said, I think the problem with Israel, just to try to explain what's happening there, because I do agree with you, is just like the media apparatus and the feeling that they have there. It's like there's not a lot of space emotionally, and like even the information that they're consuming, I think that would allow them to have that kind of like self-realization. And like you said, a lot of Israelis don't know what's happening.
There are some. I mean,
there are some. Yeah, of course,
Haaretz, you know, what was it in the fall? You had the publisher of Haaretz, you know, speaking out about what was going on there. And the paper was essentially, you know, a cutout, or there was an attempt by the government to basically shut them down on to some extent. I mean, so.
Well, so what's your explanation why Israelis don't care? It's not that they're evil, right?
Well,
that's a really good question. I wonder if Sam Seder will answer that, because they try to avoid this by saying Zionists or Israelis, and they'll avoid like saying Jews because they're not being anti-Semitic. But it's like, okay, you're telling me that all the Israeli Jews in Israel have this opinion, and apparently it's not any response to any valid thing that's going on. Okay, well, why? Why the fuck are they doing this? What is the answer to that?
I think, look, there's, I'm sure that there is a mass, you know, sort of like a failure to deal with trauma. But I think some of it is, frankly, a racism. I think.
Oh, so Jews are just racist. Okay.
You know, how can you explain, you know, how can I explain how I just watched a clip of people at a Trump rally chanting USA, USA, to watching a video of people being, you know, taken into that prison in El Salvador and having their head shaved. I mean, I don't know how I can explain that. So I don't know how I could explain how the Israelis are able to the extent that they can see what's going on in Gaza, have that reaction. But I know that it's wrong. And I think, you know, some of it undoubtedly is a racism. Some of it is, you know, maybe some type of mass failure
such an
to deal
equivocation
with trauma. I mean,
and it's just a failure.
I don't know all the
failure to deal with trauma, right? Notice that what he's saying, a lot of the language here, right, is delegitimizing. At the end of the day, the important thing to think about for Sam's response here is what Sam is saying is Israelis have no good reason to have the feelings that they do about the Palestinians. There's no good reason for Israeli Jews to have negative opinions about any of the surrounding stuff that's been going on around them. It's because they failed to deal with their trauma. It's because they have, what was the other thing he said? He said a failure to deal with trauma, and I don't even remember. It has nothing to do with none of the actions of the surrounding Arabs, none of the actions of Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, the Houthis, none of that. It's just because of whatever the Israelis, right? Oh, and because they're racist, right? All of the agency for this is put on the Israelis.
Well, I think, you know, part of it, I think there's some of the makeup of, you know, immigrants to Israel over the past several decades. I'm sure all of that enters into it. And I'm not to Israel. There's some of the makeup of, you know, immigrants to Israel over the past several decades.
That's code word for non-Middle Eastern Jews that are going to Israel, who I guess are more racist towards brown people. That's what that was code word for.
I'm sure all of that enters into it. And I'm not in a position to sort of like be able to psychoanalyze it beyond the sort of, you know, vague notions.
Sure.
But
yeah, and I agree.
From my perspective, it's gobs.
I can't psychoanalyze any of this beyond a vague notion. Like we can't ask a question at all. That's totally outside of our capabilities to try to figure out why are Israelis so ass pained. We really can't engage in that at all.
Smacking. And, you know, to me, it has shown, and, you know, I never identified myself as a Zionist as a kid.
You can actually shut this down the same way that you shut down the Russian arguments. Why did Russia invade Ukraine? NATO. Expansionism. Oh, was NATO expanding in 2014? Well, no. Oh, that's strange. So did they launch it because they announced they were going to expand? Well, no. Oh, well, that's strange. What happened? Yanukovych, the Russian loyalist PM, was ousted. Oh, that's probably more why they invaded, right? Why did October 7th or October 8th, why did the invasion, why did this current war happen? Because of racism. Oh, so on October 6th, Israelis weren't racist? No. Did they all become racist on October 7th or 8th? Well, maybe not. So what happened? Well, it was in response to, oh, they were attacked first. Okay, thank you. Maybe that would be a little bit more of an honest assessment. No?
Or, through the years, and I never identified myself as an anti-Zionist. I don't think I think it wasn't really until someone heard me articulate my perspective on this that they referred to me as anti-Zionist. And I don't really care one way or another how I'm labeled. But to me, it shows a failure of that system of government. That
like, I'm curious if you should ask on the other end, do you think Palestinians are racist? Do you think the members of Hamas are racist?
Israel has. And it has failed both from a perspective of, what I think some people had as a notion of Zionism in the 19th century. It has been a failure in terms of keeping Jews safe, frankly. It seems to me to have been a massive failure. And so I can't operate as someone who lives in Israel, but I can operate as someone who is an American in terms of like what we support, which is why I think we should end all aid. And as a Jew who sees...
Also, that's a red herring. This idea, the anti-Zionist people, or the anti-Semitic people probably, right, will always say this thing, well, the reason why I'm so big on coming down on Israel for this is just because we support them. And it's like, oh, okay. So you're telling me that if we were to cut off all support from Israel, you would no longer care that Israel were genociding Palestinians? You wouldn't support like aggressive regime change or anything else? You would just stop caring about the issue? The only reason why you care is because we support them? That's a bullshit answer.
My religion being used as what I perceive as a fig leaf for what Israelis or Zionists are doing, and so that's where I'm coming from with this. That I don't know if there is a psychological state that can justify this. In fact, I don't think there is, and so
it's just an attempt to understand, not justify. Because it is what it is, right? Like it is the way that it is, and so that's for a reason. And it's just trying to explain it. That's all. I agree with everything you're saying. But actually, one thing I want to pivot to and ask you about.
Do you think that we should cut all aid to Israel?
I think that'd be justifiable. Yeah.
And
he should ask the question next. Ethan should ask then: if we cut all aid to Israel, would you stop caring about the problem? Because there's no way that he would say yes to that. I don't believe that he would say yes to that. I don't believe it.
About like military and stuff, yeah, for sure. Israel can make their own bombs and shit.
If they
need, they don't need American military. Yeah, I agree with you on that.
I think they do need it to do what they're doing, without a doubt. And
well, what I mean is
I don't think they need it. What is our percentage of the? It's some percentage of the military budget that we support, but they could find money from other people. They can get alliances from other countries.
They're not entitled to it, to say more accurately. So yeah, I think military aid should be cut for sure. Until
as a Jew, and obviously you have a different connection to Israel than I do, as through your family and whatnot, and through having lived there. But as a Jew, I take such offense to what is being done ostensibly to protect me and my family and my ancestors and my progeny and all of it. I think it's I think the conflation of Zionism and Judaism is both not keeping Jews safe and is wrong at its core. And
this is a classic conflation of the everything relating to this really doesn't have much to do with Judaism as like a religion. It's a weird red herring sometimes by diasporoids, American Jews that just don't understand the issue very well, or just people who like talking points. Like this doesn't really have to do when we talk about Jewish people, or when we talk about the Jewish people, we're not really talking about the Jewish people insofar as some group of people that believe in a particular religion. We're really talking about the ethnic group of Jewish people. That's really what we're talking about. Maybe you can argue Sam is kind of getting at, well, he doesn't like that Jewish people as an ethnicity are being weaponized, but I don't know, it's confusing the way he's talking about it. But
we can see what it's even doing in the context of this country, the way that it's enabled Trump and to attack universities and to attack the law firms and whatever. And so I don't know. And if you agree with that, great. If not, I'm happy to discuss it with you.
Yeah, no.
Do people separate the two, though? No. Nobody in the real world separates the two. Nazis didn't go door to door saying, "Oh, you're Jewish. I'm just curious. Are you practicing or are you a secular Jew?" In the whole history of anti-Semitism, that has never, ever, ever been asked of a Jewish person before they've been persecuted in some way, pogromed in some way, Holocaust. Nobody gives a fuck about that. Nobody cares about that.
Well, I agree with everything you're saying. And part of the reason why this chasm started between me and, Hasan is very influential. So when he decides that somebody is an enemy of the movement, for criticizing him, which is what I perceive happened, then it kind of becomes reality. For example, one of my criticisms of his is him not supporting Kamala Harris. Now, would she have stopped the war and been like a perfect dove? I don't know, but I know she would have been better than Trump. I know that for sure. Trump's posting like this insane Riviera, Gaza at the Riviera with Trump hotels.
All right,
I mean, that's,
Sam.
and like he's sending the 20-pound bombs. He's telling Netanyahu.
Sam was about to give us a take of like, well, when Biden was president, they didn't do anything to help the they didn't do anything to help the Palestinians there, did they?
You have a blank check to do whatever you want. Now, like,
it just came out that Biden didn't.
Remember that news article that just came out that Biden didn't force a ceasefire? No shit, he didn't force a fucking ceasefire after terrorists. No shit, Sherlock.
Did nothing to. I mean, listen. I think.
Well, talking about Kamala.
I suspect that. I suspect that she would not have had the same policies as Trump. But at the same time, I think that it was a massive failure, both on a real human level. Like it would have, I think, had she articulated anything even remotely close to what I would hope her difference would have been, I think it would have probably had implications in the election. But I think perhaps even more importantly, it would have maybe implicated the behavior of Israel. So, I mean, look, I chose to support Harris because I perceived her as the lesser of two evils. But
yeah, me too. And I think that that's an important distinction to make at a time like this. Yeah,
I can certainly understand how some people were just so repulsed by what was happening that it made it almost impossible for them to vote for Harris. I think I
understand.
It's also so funny too, because if you go and talk to these ultra Zionists in fucking Israel, or like half the population, there's a reason why Israelis are massive fucking Trump simps. Okay. The Israeli perspective is not that Biden, allowed them to do whatever the fuck they wanted to on both ends. That is absolutely not the Israeli perspective. The Israeli perspective is fuck Biden, fuck the Democrats, and fuck democratic leadership of the United States for not giving them the same blank check, basically, that Trump has to do whatever the fuck they want. There's a reason why Netanyahu fucking loves Donald Trump.
Why they didn't? I totally understand the perspective. Like, I'm so disillusioned with this administration, I can't support Kamala. But at the same time, like, a hugely influential political streamer like Hasan, who has a huge influence on people, I think, and who's someone who who's very vocal about being pro-Palestine. I feel like it's an abdication of responsibility to be like, I'm not voting for Kamala, or I'm not telling you who I voted for. I suspect he voted for Jill Stein personally, but either way, he hasn't said, and he wouldn't endorse her.
Jesus.
Now, like, if you're just like a random protester or whatever, and like you're like, I'm so disgusted, I don't want to vote, that's fine. But if you're like a high-level political streamer, and basically you have the capacity to weigh like the lesser of two evils and what that means, I feel like it's an abdication of responsibility to not make that call.
I mean, I certainly have been critical of people who, generally don't vote for the lesser of two evils. But I think, and certainly, in the run up to the 2016 election, I certainly that was my perspective. But again, what the Biden administration was doing was so horrific that her inability to signal that there would be any change, I think. Sometimes you have to take this at face value, and I think there would be certainly, definitely other things. You would not be assaulting the government like Trump is, but I think probably this is the first election in as long as I've been doing this, and I think it's been 5 elections now. I mean, I'm old. That I couldn't really condemn.
Yes, that's because Israelis are insane, not because Biden wasn't generally permissive and helpful to Israel. Of course, we're going to be generally permissive and helpful to Israel. It's a country it's an informal ally. Of course, we're going to be. But that doesn't mean that Biden didn't do things to try to restrain Israel or force them to, proceed with caution, whether it was the building of the dock for humanitarian aid, whether it was giving them some time in late October before airstrikes began, whether it was forcing them to evacuate the 1 million people out of Rafah before beginning military strikes down there. They did apply some restraint.
Someone from taking that position based upon what we were seeing. I mean, it's
not just some random person. I do, and I'll tell you why.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't say informal ally. I guess they are called out in some of our legislation pretty specifically. So,
Kamala Harris wanted a ceasefire. She stated that. Trump said finish them. I mean, let's be honest. Like, for someone like Hasan,
said, I want a ceasefire
I'm not voting
too,
for Biden. I'm not talking about Biden.
I understand, but we found out that Biden in fact did nothing.
He didn't force a ceasefire.
To bring that about. So,
you can talk about Biden. I'm talking about Kamala Harris.
What
she said. She's the vice president. I mean, at the end of the day, she doesn't really do that much, right?
No. But I'm talking about the candidate. Biden, as a president, said he wanted a ceasefire. She, as a candidate, said I want a ceasefire.
Well, even if you're like, I don't know how much I trust them. One's like, I want a ceasefire, and the other one is like, finish them.
Well, listen, I think it was certainly obvious to me that Trump was going to be worse. But I think, like, if you're trying to get the candidate to show some indication of this, I can understand. I mean, I wouldn't do it. I would disagree with it. But
yeah, I get your point too. Like, ultimately, I understand why people wouldn't want to support them because of what they've seen, and like that, it feels like it feels like
it also shows a tremendous amount of just like electoral malfeasance on her part. I mean, they made an active choice. And I think, you could have put that Palestinian lawmaker from Georgia on stage. They made an...
Oh my God, give me a break. They made an active choice to support something that's more electorally popular in 80% of the United States than to support the fucking pro-Hamas protesters. Give me a fucking break, dude.
Active choice to signal to whomever they were signaling that they weren't going to do anything. Now, I happen to believe that she would have been better on this than Trump. But they were making an active choice to do that. I mean, it was really electoral malfeasance on her part, in my opinion. But I don't know what the point of litigating this is per se. But
well, we're talking about kind of my criticisms of Hasan and how this
I don't.
Well, let me show you this.
I don't care.
Yeah,
about,
I know.
Honestly, I'm like
Let me show you this. This is more.
I honestly.
Yeah, you don't care. I know.
I don't care.
Yeah. See, Sam is not bought into this conflict at all. So he's not going to be here to resolve anything between the two.
And why should you? I don't blame you. We talked about anti-Semitism, and you think that I don't want to put words in your mouth, right? But you seem to have conveyed that, compared to the destruction and everything happening, the genocide, the loss of life in Gaza, the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, that obviously that's way more important. So let me show you an example of something. And again, I know you don't care about the drama. To me, this isn't drama. This is one of the biggest, most influential streamers spreading something that I think is really dangerous. And you can agree or disagree, but it's a short clip. But I'll show it to you, and you tell me what you think.
This will never happen, but in a totally just world, any kind of, regardless of your background, any kind of fucking Zionist tendency should be treated in the same way as being a fucking rabid neo-Nazi. And
no.
you shouldn't even let someone be the fucking local dog catcher as Felix was posting if they've ever exhibited any sort of
Ethan's not gonna give a fuck about
positive feelings about the state of Israel. I'm just so serious about this.
Now, by the way, he didn't misspeak. He doubled down on it yesterday. He said, no, I agree. That's what I think. Now, just to recap, he says, anyone that's had positive feelings at any point about the state of Israel is a neo-Nazi that's not fit to be a dog walker. Now, to me, that seems like extremely dangerous, dehumanizing language about what could arguably be 70% of the Jewish diaspora, and certainly probably people you know in your family.
I'll tell you, there's some hyperbole there, but
that's I
think, he says Zionism, and I'll tell you what I think is really
sorry, I got to correct you. He says Zionism, and then he says, if you had positive feelings about the state of Israel at any point in your life.
I got to tell you, if you...
He doesn't care.
If you look at what's happening right now, and you have positive feelings about Israel...
He said at any point in your life, Sam. Just to be clear about what he said.
Would I have said at any point in his life, someone's life? But I just think this is such a petty, like the idea that we're going to police. Hold on, let me respond. You want me to respond to this? Like I say, I don't care about this, but if you're going to force me to respond to it, what Israel is doing right now is so far beyond the idea that someone says any time in your life or not or whatnot. He's talking about Zionism, and frankly, I think it's very difficult for me
to condemn his language.
Understand how someone could have positive feelings at this time. Now, you want to say in the past and what? Okay.
Yeah.
Like I say, I will grant you at any time in your life that is a. Dude, Ron, step away. Let me finish.
Yeah.
But see, you go in and you're making this about anti-Semitism by doing this hopscotch about a poll that people had positive feelings that Jewish people do, and then therefore he is anti-Semitic. And honestly, that type of conflation, I think, is so dangerous and so disingenuous. I mean, this is. I don't want to get too.
This, Sam probably would engage it because he probably doesn't know the history. But then, there are so many questions here. So, I'm so glad I'm not Jewish. I'm glad I'm white. Can we just a quick pause, okay? Because we've done a lot of black issues on the stream. Now we've looked at a lot of Israeli issues. It's just great being white. I really do believe the black framing that whiteness is like a category that's just made for like the master group of people who are just above all the problems of society. It is a category created to exclude others. And when you're in the white category, you just don't have to worry about like fucking anything. Like nobody gaslights you, nobody attacks you for some character. It's just fucking amazing, okay? So just big props, okay, for my fellow whites out there, okay? What an amazing place to be. Christ, okay? What an amazing place to be. When you talk, people do this thing where it's like, well, it's not anti-Semitic, okay? It's just anti-Zionist. Why were so many Jews expelled from all over the world, okay, before the country of Israel even existed? There was no common country. Was that just anti-Semitism? Okay, well, fine, the world was anti-Semitic. Why were so many Jews pogromed and expelled from Arab states in 48 after the First War? It's because they got mad as fuck that Israel was created. But why? Were they expelling Zionists or were they just expelling Jews? What about in 67? Were they expelling Zionists or were they expelling Jews? What about in 73, right? After every major war, these first three huge major wars, all these Arab states started to get really unruly about their Jewish population. People that still live there, not their Zionist population. Why do people still play this game of saying like, no, it's not anti-Semitism, it's just anti-Zionism. And then they say terms or words that invoke the thoughts of like 90% of Jewish people. How does it work that way, you know? But yeah, no.
Passionate about this. But I'll tell you something. I have had a guy who went to my bar mitzvah, my sister's bar mitzvah, my kid's bar mitzvah, sat at Passover with me 3 or 4 times, call my father and ask him if I'm anti-Semitic. Now, this is just one, that is just an example, an illustration of conflating when he's clearly talking about Zionism. Was it hyperbole to say any time in life, whatever? The fact of the matter is this conflation is dangerous for Jews. It
my God.
Whoa,
wait. Dangerous for Jews? Why? I thought we were being honest that everybody was just being anti-Zionist. Why would there be any danger whatsoever to Jews here? What do you mean by that, Sam?
Fig leaf and a way of weaponizing anti-Semitism that has enabled Donald Trump to do the shit he's doing, that has enabled the slaughter of thousands upon thousands of children and women and men, for that matter. It is not keeping Israelis safe. And this type of conflation, Ethan, is what I find far more irresponsible, frankly, than the idea that he said positive any time. I mean, look, you do a show
Sam,
4 hours a day. He does a show 5 or, as far as I can tell, 15 hours a day. And to focus in on that one tiny clause.
This is not one tiny clip, Sam.
Well,
you don't know. This is a totality of behavior.
But you
and by the way,
it's
easy. And I appreciate that you can hand wave it away and say that it doesn't.
No, I'm not hand waving it away.
Well, you kind of are.
I'm saying.
Do you not feel that these online quarrels between internet personalities are a bit pointless and frankly childish? Like, why do we care about their beef, especially with Trump breaking things? No, this is the point. The point of the pro-Palestinian propaganda machine is to cause this type of fighting. It's to get away from the fact as much as possible. It's to get away from the actual history as much as possible. It's always to take the conversation and wrestle it down into these worthless areas of discussion. This is the point. This is by design. It's a feature, not an accident.
You're saying it doesn't. You're saying actually I'm wrong for caring about it.
No, yes. In fact, I'm saying this conflation is incredibly dangerous. It is disingenuous.
I think it's dangerous to ignore what's being described as dehumanizing violent language for American Jews that have nothing to do with the war.
That is a complete mischaracterization of that.
It's not. Dog, he's not fit to be a dog walker?
He never says the word Jews.
He says a neo...
Listen, how many?
It's also so funny too to see these progressives who are like, he didn't say Jew. He didn't say Jew. Like, if I were to say, I don't feel safe in my city with a bunch of thugs walking around, okay, with their pants hanging around their knees, all right, talking this weird slang, listening to this weird rap music, and somebody's like, bro, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah. It's like, you sound kind of racist there. Excuse me? I never said any race. That sounds like you're being the racist one. Like, these guys are dog whistle experts when it comes to analyzing racism or any type of bigoted thought from the other side. But on their side, it's like, these goddamn Zionists all over the world, these Zionists that are supporting this country, every single last one of them, okay, that's supporting this country. They're not even fit to walk dogs, and we need to whatever, like all the words. He said Zionist. He did say Zionist, okay? Kobe. Zionist.
Members of Kufi have positive feelings. How many millions of members of Kufi, the Christian organization, have positive feelings for Jews? It is clearly not a function of their Judaism. It is not a function of their Judaism. And so,
and also, sorry, no offense, but anybody that talks about Israel-Palestine and brings up the religion, Judaism, has just no idea what they're talking about. It's just not a fact. This is just not at all. It's like a two. No, I'm not trying to sound mean, but it's like somebody who has no idea. It's like, okay, so there's Islam and there's Judaism. So is it like the Old Testament, or like, why are they fighting? It's like, no, what the fuck? Nobody targets Jews or have issues with them because of their religion. That's not what we're talking about in this conflict. When we're talking about Judaism, we're almost exclusively speaking about the ethnic side of things here, with maybe some outer perimeter issues. Like, this is not what we're talking about here, at least on the Jewish side.
Describes most Jews.
No.
Yes, it does, Sam.
It describes most Christian evangelicals, too.
It may do them, too, but it also describes 73% of Jews.
that is not anti-Semitism.
I don't know. What do you call it when somebody's discriminating against the vast majority of a racial or religious group, Sam?
I'm sorry. You want to look at evangelical Jews?
I don't care about evangelical people.
Okay, but I'm talking about the way you're constructing this.
I think
you can say the same thing about Christian evangelicals, too. It is not anti-Semitism. It is not. It just isn't.
Like, taking one example.
Wait. I'm sorry, real quick. Is there any advantage to making stuff in this... in the cryogenic plant? Oh, it just doesn't need to be heated, huh?
And isolation, which is what we've done here.
Well, you are the one who gave it to me.
Yeah, well, I disagree with you.
I'm using your example, and in that instance, that is not anti-Semitism.
Well, I disagree.
Conflation. Okay, well, that's our disagreement.
Yeah.
But I think that conflation is incredibly dangerous.
Well, I disagree as well.
Jews,
I think
it's dangerous for this society.
I think, frankly, I think it's dangerous to what I perceive as hand waving what's happening here. I know you said you aren't doing that.
I'm not hand waving.
You're doing the opposite. You're endorsing
decades of thought about this.
So
Decades of thought.
But the point is, you're saying that this is not dangerous. How dare you care about this? I think it's dangerous
No, I'm not saying that at all.
I personally, I mean,
I'm
Jewish
saying
people
the
have a collective
mischaracterization
memory of
of it
trauma,
as
Sam, and
anti-Semitism.
it starts a certain way, and it starts with people. It starts
no,
with
wait, you didn't
dehumanizing
hate
language, like
this.
saying
Fuck
you're not
you.
fit to walk a dog. I mean, what are we
He's
doing
not
here?
talking about
It's
Jews.
irresponsible language.
He's not talking about
He's
Jews.
talking about 73% of Jewish people.
No, you said that.
No, that's a poll that's readily available.
No, you made that connection. He did not, because we have millions upon.
Hasan doesn't know. Is he about to say we have millions upon millions of Jews that don't support the state of Israel? Because that would just be a fucking lie. What? Wait, hold on. I'm sorry.
Millions of members of Kufi. We have millions upon millions in this country of evangelicals.
Bro, nobody. I'm sorry. I have never in my life heard somebody use Zionist to refer to non-Jewish Israeli supporters. That's just not, at least in the vernacular that I'm aware of. I don't hear people talk about like Christians that support Israel that much as Zionists. Like, this is almost always used to refer to Jewish people supporting Israel, or like AIPAC or stuff like this. What are we talking about? Get out of here. Oh my God.
Who also believe the same thing.
Does your dad
and
have?
You cannot say it's
could you just-
anti-Semitism.
Could you
You
describe
cannot say it's anti-Semitism if you're also including millions upon millions, far more Christians than Jews.
Would you say that your father, who you mentioned, said something to you, that he's ever in his life had positive feelings about the state of Israel?
I've had positive feelings of Israel.
Well, does your dad have any positive feelings about it now?
I would assume so.
Not in terms of like I support them, but
I've
like,
had
I think
positive feelings. I went to Israel on.
Okay, good. Then you're a neo-Nazi,
my
not fit to walk a
confirmation.
dog. How do you feel about that?
No, that's you saying that.
That's
that is
literally
not
what he
Hasan
said. I'll play it again.
I think like this will never happen, but in a totally just world, any kind of, regardless of your background, any kind of fucking Zionist tendency should be treated in the same way as being a fucking rabid neo-Nazi. And you shouldn't even let someone be the fucking local dog catcher as Felix was posting if they've ever exhibited any sort of like positive feelings about the state of Israel. I'm so serious about this.
Another thing he's doing, by the way, and Hasan is
Listen,
he
you
plays
can say
around with
that
the
that's
term
a wrong thing to do.
Zionist, right?
You can say that's a wrong thing to say, but he's not talking about Jews. He's talking about people who have exhibited these positive feelings, and that includes millions upon millions of Christians.
I don't know about that one, Chief. Don't you get called a Zionist? Yeah, people will use it occasionally, but when people are saying Zionists, like when people say Zog, nobody is saying Zionist-controlled government or what is it, Zionist occupation government or Zionist government. Nobody is saying that to mean, wow, pro-Israeli Christians are occupying the government. Like, it's literally baked into their racial slur. It's baked into their conspiracies, okay? Come on. This is a joke point.
More Christians.
Okay, well, listen, I don't think they're neo-Nazis, not fit to walk dogs, either. I think it's insane language.
Listen, you don't want to tell me that you have never engaged in hyperbole. You and I both are in this business, so we do that.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You know, I just think that,
It's, listen, you can say
I
it's
just
an
think that,
inappropriate thing to say. It's an unfair thing to say.
I just think like
but
Arabs
it's
that
not
support Israel aren't
anti-Semitism.
fit to walk a dog.
It is not anti-Semitism.
Okay, well, we're at an impasse on this one.
Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, but anyway, another thing he does is he says Zionist tendencies, and he's someone that plays around with Zionism. He calls me a Zionist, and again, I know we're arguing here about semantics of what Hasan said, but I don't think that
He's
you can
gonna call him a
accurately
Zionist now.
characterize me as
He's
that,
gonna say,
as it's used colloquially.
You are.
You don't know, right?
Say
But
it.
he's saying Zionist tendencies.
He's
What
gonna
does that mean?
Say it.
What's a Zionist tendency?
I don't know.
Yeah.
You're going to talk to him on Friday. You can ask him what a Zionist tendency is. I
Sure.
suppose I would guess. And, like I've looked at polls too, where, people have various different understandings of what not Zionism is. But I think it is my guess. And I don't know what he was thinking specifically, but the notion of an ethno-state that engages and allows whatever in the name of Zionism allows for this mass slaughter, I think is horrific.
Wow. So
Sure,
brave.
me too.
Okay. I mean, then I think we the three of us agree on that regard.
Yeah, I think we're so. Another thing is like to take it even further. I mean, Hasan pretty much like openly
Well, let's not
supports
talk
Hamas.
about Hasan. Let's talk about this.
Sure. I mean, what do you want to ask me?
Well, I mean, if you want to ask me about,
Well, let me.
I'm not here to explore.
Yeah. I have a list of things.
But if you want to talk about Hamas, I mean, I think look.
Well, how do you feel about Hamas?
God, come on, dude. This is such an easy, if you're not a disgusting piece of shit, it's so fucking easy to just say Hamas is horrible. Is it? He's not going to give some answer along the lines of like, I'm not here to criticize a resistance movement for not acting perfectly. He must be able to just say Hamas is horrible. I don't defend Hamas, but I understand where they're coming from.
List of things
but if you want to talk about Hamas, I mean, I think look.
Well, how do you feel about Hamas?
I feel that Hamas, people can perceive it as a liberation organization. We call them terrorists in this country. We call the ANC
We call the
terrorists.
ANC terrorists. We called Nelson Mandela terrorists. It's the same. These are the Pally talking points. Dude, it's so gross. Holy shit. Oh my God, bro.
I'm Sam.
Listen, I think there are parts, I would imagine, of Hamas that have done good for the people in Gaza, and I think they have done bad things. But can you make, this is what I would be curious, can you make the same concession for the
Israeli government? Can you at least say that maybe the Israeli government has done some good things and some bad things? Or is the Israeli government all bad, but Hamas we can have a nuanced look at?
Sort of feel, I guess, ultimately probably like Ehud Barak when he said that were I Palestinian and I was living in Gaza, that it would be likely that I would join Hamas. I mean, that's what Ehud Barak said on multiple occasions. And I think that is very, that is an understanding of human nature.
That you're not affording Israelis, by the way, just to point out an inconsistency there.
How so?
Well, you're not. You're like, I refuse to understand human nature and their reaction.
Oh,
it's
true.
just
Good
evil,
job.
and
Good
I don't know how to
job.
explain it.
I didn't use the word evil.
Right. I'm inferring because I asked you if you think they're evil. And you didn't really answer that.
Listen, I don't know what Gazans felt on October 8th, but toward Hamas. But I can tell you that we have there is a long history of terrorist organizations or so-called terrorist organizations
that
like the
ANC fighters,
or the IRA, even the PLO,
now, Sam,
that ultimately become a political organization.
I think the comparison to Hamas to what happened in South Africa is insanely disingenuous. And I personally hate when people do that.
I mean, Mandela didn't think so.
Well, Mandela did think so. He explicitly stated that he avoided committing violence on the Seder Street because it would make reunification impossible.
Yep.
That's something he said.
I think you could say that tactically speaking. Listen,
by the way, Sam, in the totality of their campaign, I think under 200 civilians died.
Yep.
And the people who did kill civilians were almost all held accountable for what they did.
Yep.
That's a difference, Sam.
Well, I mean, I can tell you that
a significant difference.
Well, it is a significant difference. I mean, I imagine many of those people who committed atrocities on October 7th are dead now. And,
what the fuck what kind of wacky weirdo dodge? What? Because Israel killed them.
What does that have to do with anything?
Well, that's accountability.
Accountability by who? Who killed them? What?
Okay.
But,
I mean, being held accountable by the party that they're presumably doing the violence on behalf.
Yes.
Like,
but you're saying the entire ANC was held accountable?
No, I was saying Nelson Mandela's party, if someone killed a civilian, they would hold them accountable. They would charge them. They would disavow their actions.
The ANC did?
Yes.
Well, the IRA was bombing places in England and...
Why are we... None of these people know anything about the... Fuck. I was trying to be nice to Sam Seder. I'm sorry, I can't do it, actually. It's the foreign policy breaks me. This is why the Kalinsky Bridge will never be rebuilt either. I can't do these foreign policy takes. It's always the same 2 or 3 movements that they try to rub, and they don't know anything about them or give a fuck. Seder had no fucking idea what the ANC actually did. He probably just assumed they were murdering civilians all over South Africa. That's not true. And I think that 200 number that Ethan gives is even an oversight. The ANC explicitly and specifically tried to only target government public infrastructure because they knew that killing civilians would be a bad idea. Okay? Like, this was an explicit stated goal, and Mandela was ready to accept peace and reunification in South Africa. What deals did Arafat ever accept? That's another killer question to the pro-Pallies. What was Arafat looking for? Can you give me anything that Arafat was actually willing to agree on with any of the Israeli delegation ever when it came to settling a peace deal between Israelis and Palestinians? Ever? Like, one deal on the table, one firm statement of him that he would have accepted, because you can't find it. The comparison between Mandela and Arafat or the ANC and Gaza or Hamas is just ridiculous. And it just shows you don't understand anything about any of the movements. And then they also jump up to the Irish stuff as well, because these are like all of the meme groups that just get kind of roped in with each other. And it's like, bro, give me a fucking break.
Throughout Ireland, I mean, we have even the Irgun or the Stern Gang. When they killed...
The Irgun? You mean the people? Yes, they were terrorists. They were. And when and when they were literally sailing back to fucking Israel, he would be a future prime minister. Menachem Begin or whatever, as they were literally sailing back to Israel with fucking, I think they had a whole ship full of fucking smuggled weapons from Czechoslovakia, and they're like, we're about to fucking terrorist the fuck out of this. It was Ben-Gurion standing with a Haganah who literally set fire to and attacked the own incoming ship, saying, we are disbanding all of you. You guys are insane. You're all joining the Haganah or whatever, and then we're going to just join the new IDF, right? These groups were terrorists. They did commit these attacks, and they were disbanded. They were disavowed by the Haganah. Ethan won't know. Ethan won't have this perspective. Fuck, it's such a bad faith talking point.
The villagers in 1948. I mean, the history is full of examples of organizations
harassing the villagers in 48. You mean during the war? When there was an active war? This was during a war. It was a war of independence. It was like 6-7 Arab states versus Israel. Yeah, there was a lot of shit going on. What are you talking about?
I commit terrorist act. Now, I will tell you,
people look at South Africa.
I do not condone the killing of civilians. Which is why which is why obviously I'm upset about what Israel is doing.
Sure. The part that I don't like about people, people say, I feel like people sweep for Hamas by saying, like, what do you expect, right? But the truth is that people use South Africa as an example, but what South Africa shows is that you don't need to commit a violent war against civilians to liberate yourself.
Well, I mean, listen, we had for a year, we had the Great March of Return, where, Sinwar himself was involved in that. There was Palestinians marching on a regular basis over the course of the year. I don't know how many it was, 50 or whatever, that were...
Please, God, tell me Ethan has watched. Sam has all the meme talking points. And also, by the way, Sam's saying Sinwar himself was involved. The whole point of that Great March of Return was that Sinwar wasn't supposed to be involved. That was just supposed to be Palestinian people marching back to their old homes in fucking Israel. It wasn't supposed to be with the involvement of Hamas. So Sam is accidentally granting the pro-Zionist talking point, which was true, by the way, that Hamas involved themselves on day fucking one, and you can see videos of Sinwar walking amongst the people talking about it, okay? They weren't supposed to have any Hamas involvement originally.
Where innocent people went there, and snipers are shooting down unarmed civilians. And so...
Oh my God, it's every meme talk. I don't care. Fuck, he's trying to be pro-Zionist again. Fuck, we need to listen to more Benjamin Netanyahu. Get me out of here.
Time and time again, and over the course of the 20 years that I've been professionally, covering this, my attitude towards Israel's willingness to have peace has changed, and my understanding of it has changed. And I can only imagine how more intense that feeling is to be living in a place that is, functionally like the Warsaw Ghetto, insofar as like you don't have access to resources, you have 50%.
Oh my God.
Sorry. Unemployment, the apartheid that is taking place in terms of the West Bank. I mean,
I agree with those characterizations, by the way, Sam. Just to say.
But I can't imagine that my response wouldn't be to pick up a weapon.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know.
So he understands it. Okay, cool. So you understand the violence on the Palestinian side, but you won't grant any of that understanding on the Israeli side. That's good. Okay, cool. Good one.
Working out.
Well, none of it's working out, is it?
No, not much at all. Not really much at all.
It's called the greatest attack on Israelis in 75 years. The notion of Zionism and the way that Israel is organized as a society.
Hey, I must be being uncharitable here, because it almost sounds like that was a tinge of congratulations for Hamas's attack. But maybe I was just reading that phrasing uncharitably. Like Ethan was like, how's that going for him? And they're like, well, not good, because Hamas just fucked them up.
Well, none of it's apartheid that is taking place in terms of the West Bank. I mean,
I agree with those characterizations, by the way, Sam. Just to say.
But I can't imagine that my response wouldn't be to pick up a weapon.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know.
It's not really working out.
Well, none of it's working out, is it?
Not much at all. Not really much at all.
It's called the greatest attack on Israelis in 75 years. The notion of Zionism and the way that Israel is organized as a society is not protecting Jews.
Well,
it's not protecting Israelis. It's not protecting Jews worldwide. It is. There may have been a time where Zionism had and there were certainly proponents of Zionism in the early 20th century, in the late, perhaps late 19th century, where there was a notion of a multi-ethnic democracy that fell by the wayside.
See, this is the historical argument, right? But Ethan won't have this. Like, oh, so at one point Zionists were willing to have this like multi-ethnic society. What changed? What happened that made them not feel that way? Sam, did they all just become racist? Maybe they did, but make them say that at least. So what? So they were willing to do this multi-ethnic thing, and then they stopped. Why? What happened?
Like Hannah Arendt and Einstein, left the Zionist Congress, and what it has evolved into is, I think, a nightmare for everyone involved. And so, I don't know how I would react in that type of immiseration, frankly.
Well, can I ask you?
But again, Ehud Barak said that he would pick up a wepen were he one of them. And
that's fine.
He's far closer to the conflict than I am.
I'm not saying I don't understand why people pick up weapons, right? So let me ask you this: what do you think about October 7th attack?
What do I think about it?
Yeah.
I mean, it was
He's just going to do this. I condemn all civilian death. Oh. But Israel does way more. Oh.
horrific.
Mm-hmm. And this was like a military action by Hamas to what end?
I mean, I suspect,
don't do the thing. Don't do the thing. Don't do the thing. I suspect. Okay, no. You're gonna say I suspect it was probably just for terrorism, because sometimes people like to be cutesy and sneaky with this, and they like to do this talking point of saying that because there were a couple military bases that were hit, because on the Gaza fence there are military establishments in some of these near some of these kibbutzim. And so some people will try to say, actually, it was just a military hit. I think actually if you go to the Arab version of Wikipedia, I think they still have that talking point there. Oh, this is just a military strike. He's not going to do that, though.
I don't know what the strategy was. I mean, they attacked 2 military bases. I don't know if they were aware of that.
The festival?
The
oh,
dance,
my God.
The Nova rave.
Yeah, I don't know if they knew that rave was happening.
It's so unreal, dude. It's every shitty pro-Palestinian. Oh, God, that one guy in my chat's probably getting so triggered right now. I'm sorry, Charlie.
I suspect it was to derail the Abraham Accords, which were going to leave the Palestinians out of the equation, where an authoritarian
you leave out that they
derail the Abraham Accords. The Abraham Accords had already gone through. What do you? Or they were already being acted upon. What do you mean? I like how there is some political and masterminded thing. I mean, to some extent, that's actually kind of true. They were fighting against Israeli integration with the rest of the Arab world. That is true, but
attacked kibbutzim, by the way.
No, yes, of course they did. But I'm saying that they.
But they also attacked military bases.
I don't know what the strategy was.
Well, okay, so what do you think? Would you expect the response of Israel would be to that?
I had no doubt on that day.
They were going to launch a genocide.
Israel was going to respond.
Go insane. Yeah, right. It was going to be horrific. We all knew.
Yes, but I think I think the lack of proportionality was just beyond, frankly, and I was aware that this was going to be a horror show, but I don't think I had the level of awareness of what they would do to go in and literally level it, destroy, what is it, 80, 90% of the structures in Palestine, bomb hospitals, that they would use.
Well, Hamas did know that, because that's why they attacked.
Food as a weapon.
I'm more interested in the justification for what they're doing.
Probably
there.
took hostages with the idea that they would be able to negotiate.
I understand why they took hostages. I don't understand why they took children and elderly.
I believe that they probably. I mean, this is all conjecture on my part. That they would be able to trade them as a way to inhibit Israel's doing what they're doing. And I don't know if they could have even imagined that. I'm not going to.
Listen to how much. It's so funny. He can't even imagine why Israelis feel the way that they do. But his imagination for Hamas can extend to not even what Hamas thinks, but Hamas's own imagination, right? Why do Israelis have such a feeling about Palestinians? I don't know. Racist? What was Hamas thinking October 7th? Well, they were probably hoping that they could capture civilians so that after doing their attacks, of which 2 were against military bases, that they could probably exchange those for other Israelis. But I don't even know if Hamas could imagine how crazy Israel would be after those terrorists. Jesus fucking Christ. Really?
I'm not going to endorse Hamas's, strategy here.
Well, I'm just trying to flesh it out here, because this is what I'm getting to is Hamas. I think they knew that this was the reaction that would happen.
I can't imagine that they assumed that there would be this level of destruction.
I mean, that's why they hate Israel. I don't think they underestimate how violent the IDF can be. You know what I mean? That's why they attacked.
I certainly underestimated that they would go this far. Use.
I didn't think they go this far, but
bomb hospitals and
Why wouldn't they assume that? Haven't you guys said Israel has been bombing hospitals and killing? Didn't you just bring up the Great March of Return, where innocent Palestinians are being shot by snipers? Didn't this happen with Cast Lead? Didn't this happen with Protective Edge? In what was it, 2008 and then 2014? Haven't these same things happened? Why would you assume any different now? What? Doesn't even make sense.
Shoot EMTs and have rules of engagement like this. I mean, I think Hamas is certainly up to criticism for their strategy here.
I think that's an understatement.
Up to credit. I don't think Hamas is beyond a reproach. Let me be clear. I think we can criticize Hamas. Oh my God, dude.
Well, I mean, if that's the
well, I mean, they're a terrorist organization that intentionally antagonized the IDF to come mass slaughter their civilians.
I think that if they overestimated whether Israel cared about the hostages, without a doubt. I mean, there's I don't know that there would.
And somehow it's still roped back around to being Israel's fault. I just thought that maybe Hamas just thought Israel would give a fuck about some of their captured people, but they underestimated how much Israel doesn't even care about their own people.
Be anybody who would make a case that this is what was their plan to have Israel respond in this way. That's absurd.
Well, and the same is true of I guess Israelis feel the same way. It was totally unprecedented. You know what happened? So maybe they didn't think that their mission would be as successful as it was. On the other hand,
I have no doubt that they did not think that they would that they would have been able to overrun that. I mean, I think we were told that the technology of Israel's defense, et cetera, was perfect and something we should emulate in this country. I mean, Trump was all talking about that. So I have no doubt that Hamas overestimated.
Or overestimate the IDF. Yeah, I got you.
What they would be able.
Underestimated how effective their attack would be. And, you know, when you get to, especially when you're Arab, man, or Palestinian, I guess, and when you get to a festival full of music goers, fuck, man, how could you not just fucking mass rape and murder, you know? They probably thought that the IDF would have stopped them by then, you know? They weren't even ready for it. Jesus.
Able to, what kind of destruction they would wreak, and they underestimated the violence that Israel would perpetrate on Gaza. I don't know that anyone could have imagined that Israel would have engaged in this level of destruction and immiseration. And
real quick, how do you burn off extra ice, or what do you do with your extra ice on this godforsaken fucking planet?
Bombing churches and bombing hospitals and blowing up universities and destroying the infrastructure. I mean,
see, Ethan, this is another history point. Oh, recyclers. Like, what Ethan should just respond very simply here is, I thought you said that Israel's been engaging in all of this behavior since 2005, at least, if not since their founding. You're telling me that Palestinians who have been living in an apartheid state for 75 years underestimated the level of destruction that Israel would wrought onto Gaza if they committed the largest terrorist attack in, like, the history of the world? Like, do you know how fucking stupid that sounds on its face? How silly that is? What?
It's almost beyond belief.
So one thing that when I was talking to Hasan, and I'm just going to talk about his point. This is about him personally. When I asked him, because this is obviously the $1 million question, right? By the way, just, you know, there's not one public bomb shelter in Gaza.
True.
There's not one public bomb shelter in Gaza?
Mm-mm.
Let's see. What is the response here? Israel would probably bomb it anyway. They've already shown that they're willing to target journalists and healthcare people and that.
Okay.
I just think that's interesting. It's pretty fucked up, don't you think?
Do I think it's fucked up?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I understand the point. Like,
well, I mean, do
you think anything would be standing anymore?
Well, bomb shelters are underground. I mean, they would definitely be a lot safer.
I've seen what happened to tunnels under hospitals.
Your statement is, so you say there were tunnels under hospitals.
Israel?
Yeah, Israel built them. I've read that article too. They did build some as a bomb shelter under, it was one of these hospitals. I don't think it was Al-Shifa, but that doesn't mean that they were meant to be used for Hamas, C2. It's all of them. It's all the bad talking points. It's all the bad talking points. Go ahead, give it to us.
Built the ones under the first one that they went into. They built it when they were occupying Gaza.
Are you right? That's true of that one. I mean, they have a vast tunnel network, obviously, as everybody knows. But I don't care. I don't want to get into the weeds on this. The $1 million question is like, what can we do? Now, it's obviously insanely difficult
as Americans,
to say.
I think we can stop aid immediately. I mean, obviously, it's not going to happen under
I'm in
Trump.
favor of that, by the way.
Okay, I mean, good.
I mean, I think
we should call for all aid to be seized, and I think we should stop protecting them in the UN.
What should have Israel done on October 8th, I guess? Like, what would have been an appropriate response for their government?
I mean,
without saying not this.
What should they have done on October 8th? I mean, I think that
they should have disbanded their entire government. They should have made a deal to get all the hostages back. They should have never gone into Gaza at all. They should have just bent over and welcomed the Palestinian dick into the Zionist ass. They should have disbanded the whole state of Israel, basically, with maybe a little bit of special ops sprinkled in, maybe, but probably not.
I think that they're hitting strategic sites to attempt to take out leadership. They should have, but let's not, the
leadership was underground.
Yeah, to look at that moment in history, like maybe it was.
I disagree because they had to do something.
Maybe in that moment, they had to go in and bomb or whatever they do. I think that any action that they would have taken at that point, frankly, was a function of literally decades of oppressing people and attempting to bring this to an eventuality.
So nothing.
Right. I mean, this was.
That's good. At least he's a little bit honest about it. And this is what most Israelis would say. No matter what we do, everybody around the world is always going to criticize us. There is no correct action, which is probably true. People like Sam would have never allowed Israel to take any kind of defensive action here or offensive action. They would have never allowed it.
And so what should they have done?
Ages ago. Well, I mean,
you're avoiding, yeah.
Okay, I think what they should have done is begun empowering
their government.
Palestinians in the West Bank. They should have done the same.
This is my favorite answer, Sam. You're saying that this is what Hasan told me. They should disband their government and lift the borders in response to the worst terrorist attack that's ever happened.
I think honestly, when you see that your policies have failed, but I don't think
you
it's
actually don't believe that that's a real thing, though. I'm interested in having like a real conversation. You can't like live in a fairy tale land where, in response to the worst military or terrorist attack of all time, Israel, who's already, as you state, like genocidal and racist and all these terrible things, is going to lift their borders and disband their government.
Wait a second. You're asking me what they should have done, and that's different.
No, in a realistic way, not in a fairy tale,
Sam.
Sam.
Well, listen, there is no realistic thing. Their agenda has been quite clear.
Their
agenda has been since Ariel Sharon walked on the Temple Mount and tried to scuttle peace talks. The agenda since the assassination of Rabin by arch Zionists in Israel The agenda has been to bring about this moment. There is no doubt about it. The annihilation of the Palestinian people has been an agenda in Israel for far too long. So from the perspective, it's anything I say is fantastical relative to what they would actually do. Anything.
There's nothing they could have done that because of the situation, anything
I'm
they would have done would have
been. There was no plan that on this day they were going to do this. But if you go back 10 or 15 years ago and look into Bibi Netanyahu's brain, the idea that this is ultimately going to happen was definitely the agenda.
What, in terms of like attacking Gaza or inciting an attack?
I would imagine both, frankly. But to find a way to eliminate the Palestinians, this has been the agenda of at one time what I think was a smaller segment of the Israeli body politic, and I think has increasingly become an even larger portion of the Israeli politic.
Why?
So I mean, anything I say in terms of should is fantastical. Anything.
So yeah, okay. I mean, so this is like I understand where you're coming from, right? Like,
there was an opportunity for a ceasefire that was called in November, in December. They could have held a ceasefire at any point, and the amount of killing would have been far less. They could have.
Why, in what world would you have ever expected anybody to agree to a ceasefire when you have just like you understand that no country on the planet would be okay with you committing the largest terrorist attack fucking ever, and then right after that saying, whoa, wait. This is like, it reminds me of the siblings where you're antagonizing I guess it would be an older sibling, and you like hit them, and then they look at you and you're like, oh, wait, I didn't mean, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean, right? It's like, bro, that's never, ever happening. That's never happening, ever.
Have done that. They could have ended it after a week.
I mean, Hamas could have ended the war anytime too.
How could have Hamas ended the war?
By releasing the hostages?
No, listen, Israel has said time and time again that the release of the hostages is not going to end their assault on Gaza. They have said this over
I don't believe
and
that's,
over and over.
I haven't seen those statements. I've seen the opposite. I believe that
you really have.
No, there's no world. I think Israel literally did, explicitly shut down ideas of peace talks immediately after the October 7th attacks. I don't think Israel would have accepted, and they shouldn't. That's ridiculous. You can't just like abduct a bunch of people and then use that to have like basically a free shot at attacking Israel, and then saying like, okay, wait, let's do hostages. We're good now, right? LOL.
Haven't seen those statements?
No, I haven't. I'll review them. I mean, it depends when it depends when they were made too, right? Like, what's in response to?
At any time they could have done that.
Well, what has Hamas done to end the war?
Hamas offered the hostages early on to say Hamas offered all the hostages in agreement in response to Israel not coming into Gaza. I mean, there's just to defend Israel's actions.
That didn't happen
as being inevitable. When do you think they should have ended it? When do you think they should have ended it?
So who have ended what?
You've asked me the question, what should have Israel done? You tell me what they should have done. Do you think what they've done is right?
Well, I've clearly stated no, Sam.
Okay, so tell me what they should have done.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, hindsight is a beautiful thing. But in my opinion, like you said, I think some more specific strikes. I think more moving slowly, because as you kind of pointed out but didn't really acknowledge.
When do you think they should have ended?
Do you want me to answer?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the leadership is obviously underground. So it's going to be a long mission of trying to get them. It's going to be a difficult mission. But I think militarily, they probably have some obligation to their citizenry, at the very least, to like take out but we're ignoring the fact that missiles are being shot into Israel nonstop. And I know you're going to say, Iron Dome stops most of them, which is true. But at the same time, I mean, a country needs to respond to that. They can't just allow missiles to be shot in.
Tell me the non-fantastical version of what they should have done. Should have been 2 weeks, 3 weeks? How many members of Hamas should they have killed before they leave? Because we know that Blinken said on his way out that virtually every Hamas member of Hamas that they've killed has probably been replaced by someone who's lost a family member or an entire family or whatnot. So you tell me, Ethan, if you're...
Who cares? That's not the operational efficiency of somebody isn't measured by dead relatives. If that was the case, Arabs would have never lost a war in the entire history of the Arab-Israeli conflict.
The one with the sensical perspective on this, and mine is fantastical. What should they have done that would have been appropriate in your mind?
Yeah. So besides like special operations and stuff, I think it would have been a good idea to... I think there's a space where they could like try to find peace partners in Gaza before destroying the whole thing. Like, obviously, they approached it completely wrong, right? But there are ways, I think, that could have happened that are realistic, like trying to forge some kind of peace partner, some kind of alliance, some kind of international coalition.
All those people were marching. They were marching in the Great March of Return, week after week after week.
Sam, was there Hamas activity at the Great March?
Sinwar was marching. Sinwar was marching with them.
Were people attacking the border wall?
During the Great March of Return, the first dozens of these things before the...
People were attacking from the first one, by the way. So whatever Sam is about to say here is a fucking lie, because he probably doesn't know anything about it, because he probably doesn't give a fuck about it, to be fair. It's just West versus East, oppressor versus oppressee, and that's all you got to know.
The snipers? No, they weren't. So there were the people, dozens of these things before the...
Dozens of these things? First of all, they were once a week. So dozens and dozens. You're talking dozens of these things would be a year's worth or half a year's worth of these marches. So just stupid. Whatever, dude.
The snipers? No, they weren't. So there were the people for peace.
There was Hamas activity. They were attacking the fence. They were like trying to cross the border.
They were
But not
attacking
militants. Militants were trying to cross the border.
You're telling me that in the first dozen of these marches, there were people attacking the fence?
Yes.
Correct.
Dozens of these marches, Sam? Do you even know how frequently these were once a week? Dozens? What are you talking about?
Okay.
He had no idea. He doesn't know.
Yeah. But I mean, again, I think that there's a way for Israel to try. I think they can obviously.
Destiny was literally on an IDF-sponsored tour. Thank you for that contribution to my YouTube chat, Saqib Ahmed. Thank you.
Pursue peace. The way that they're doing it is impossible, right? Like, it's fucked up. It's insane. It's genocidal. It's horrific.
They're not pursuing peace.
I'm not saying. I'm saying the opposite,
I don't
Sam.
think Israel is.
Well, you
pursuing
asked me
peace.
what should they have done. I mean, obviously,
Yes.
they're not pursuing peace. I agree with you. Like, quite the opposite. That's not what they're doing. But I'm saying there could have been a path, although it's not. I think, unfortunately, I think their response was inevitable based on everything that happened.
Yep.
You think it was inevitable that they would kill these many people
Yep.
and they would use
Yep.
food supplies as a weapon, that they would have leveled?
Yes, and the response should be, yeah, haven't you been accusing Israel of doing that for decades? Haven't you already been accusing Israel? Remember the sugar cookie ban, right? Have you guys been accusing the blockade of being genocidal for decades anyway? So why would you assume anything but?
Hospitals and universities and 80-90% of the homes? I mean, how
I don't know to what extent, but a huge response was definitely inevitable. I'm not justifying it, Sam. You asked me a question. I'm answering it. You're putting this on me like I'm saying.
No. I'm just saying inevitability. I wonder what you must think of an Israeli body politic where this level of atrocity is inevitable.
You're the one who literally said you couldn't even imagine why Israelis felt the way they did about all this other than racism. And now you're trying to flip this on Ethan? Like Ethan is the one with the surprising opinion here? What?
Well, you described your and Hamas's understanding of the IDF. I wouldn't say that. I can't say to what extent, but you agree that a huge response was inevitable.
Listen, I believe a response that was inevitable by Israel, and that's because I have a much more theoretically jaded view of that country and their agenda, I think, than you. But to expect that what they've done is inevitable. I just wonder, what it is that you think is in that body politic. Listen, I don't think it's inevitable. Just to use an example in this country, I don't think that it's inevitable that we are going to be deporting and disappearing immigrants in this country. I think it's possible, but my perspective on America is still too optimistic to think that's inevitable. I can't even imagine what I would think would be inevitable. And I think, listen, our invasion of Iraq and the complete lack of caring, and the only thing that would even mitigate that is there were no images coming out of Iraq, or very few, and certainly I was exposing them more than the American population writ large. But to perceive what we did in Iraq as inevitable.
It's a different situation. That's completely, that was completely unpredictable. But we kind of touched on it. And again, to what end this even matters is it doesn't ultimately. But Hamas knew that they were going to bomb the fuck out of Gaza.
Listen, I would imagine Hamas thought there was going to be a response, but they wouldn't have taken hostages if they thought that they couldn't use those hostages
Of course
as a
they
way
thought they could. I don't deny that.
of deterring Israel from entering. And that was a miscalculation on their part. They presumed that Israel was more interested in those hostages, I think, than they had assumed.
Well, and that's part of what a lot of the civil unrest in Israel is about, is that a lot of people do care about the hostages and think that the government needs to stop the war and focus on getting the hostages back and not killing innocent civilians. So that
I wonder about that last part. But
which part?
He's about to say, Sam is about to say, the people that want the hostages back don't even give a fuck about dead civilians. They just want the hostages back. Jesus Christ. This is right after he said, how sad must your view of the average Israeli be to Ethan? He's about to say that.
Civilians. So
I wonder about that last part. But
which part?
The part about the killing of innocent civilians. I think that
I said that's what they're doing.
No. I'm saying I wonder if the Israeli body politic.
Oh, you think the Israelis want civilians to die?
Yes.
I think the Israelis. Obviously not all Israelis, but I think that enough of Israelis to maintain this government believe that Palestinians in Gaza, that their lives have no value, that they are all future enemies, that they that they all represent a threat to Israel. And I think that's, I think that's a twisted perspective.
Just so you know, there were massive demonstrations in Israel, tens of thousands of people in a country that's relatively small. So I think characterizing like the majority of the public as wanting to kill civilians is a little sick, personally. But you know, it's, I guess you could say whatever you want.
I'm basing this on conversations with you know, Israeli reporters that there does not seem to be in Israel a majority, at the very least, of people who are concerned about the fate of the Palestinians in Gaza. Certainly they want hostages, and again, not all Israelis, but you know, look, I can make
like, that's not very surprising that there's not going to be very much empathy for people at the end of an insane of the largest terrorist attack like in the history of that country, right?
Analogous assessments of the United States at various times.
Like, should we really be that shocked about that?
Reflect poorly on our national body politic as well. But you know, the proof is in the pudding.
Can I tell you something? 300,000 protesters in Tel Aviv, 200,000 in the rest of the country. That's 500,000 people out in the street protesting the government of a country that has maybe 6 million or 5 million in the.
Are you talking about the protests about the judiciary?
I'm talking about to release the hostages.
Okay, to release the hostages.
Yeah. To stop, to ceasefire. Ceasefire, Sam. That's what that means.
They were
500,000.
They were calling for a ceasefire, or they were calling for a release of the hostages?
Well, what's the point of telling Hamas to release the hostages? Yeah, of course it's a ceasefire, Sam.
Well, but Israel has, and I know, I'll look this up.
Deal with this.
I don't have
500,000
Israel.
Israel.
Let's look this up and see how many times the Israeli government has said return of the hostages will not end.
Sam, I'm responding to you saying the majority of Israelis want civilians to die. 500,000 people came to the street for a ceasefire of a country of 5 million, Sam. That's 10%.
Israel just broke the latest ceasefire. Okay, where is the political response from the Israeli people? I mean, the idea that Gazans can be held responsible for an election that happened 18 years ago.
Sam, you said the majority of Israelis want civilians to die.
I think the majority of Israelis do not have a problem with what's going on in Gaza. That is
I think that unfortunately might be true to the extent that they've gotten.
Well, then we agree.
They've gotten much more radical. Unfortunately, tragically, everybody's been a lot more radicalized since October 7th, and that's tragic. I agree. I think people in Israel are jaded and they are cynical and they don't care, like you said, and I think it's tragic.
Yes, well, that's what my contention was. I mean, I'm looking at something from May.
I wouldn't say most of them want to kill civilians.
Well, earlier, Sam, you were saying that you can't even imagine why Israelis are so ass-pained over, you know, everything that was going on. But it's cool. I guess now you seem to understand that better, but okay.
Though.
Well, I think that they don't.
And I wouldn't say that there isn't a sizable portion of Israeli citizenry that want a ceasefire. When 500,000 people, Sam, marched out on the street of a country of 5 million for a ceasefire.
This Pew research, 39% say Israel's military response against Hamas in Gaza has been about right. 34% say not gone far enough. Sure. Now, granted, that was in May of this past year, so maybe that's changed. I would hope. But you know that.
What an unbelievably dated poll. May of last year? This might have been, was that before all of the Hezbollah attacks? That might have been before, I don't even remember their names. Now I never have to learn them. I don't remember when Sinwar, Hania, and is it Mohammed Daif? Or is it Daif Mohammed? When those three were killed. I don't even know if all three of them were dead yet.
That's all the most recent data I have.
Yeah, no, I know.
That was a long time ago.
40% last year said that Israelis should govern the Gaza Strip.
I know that people.
I don't know what's left now.
Why would now? Like, this is a good history question. Ethan doesn't have it. Like, they think that they should govern the Gaza Strip. Why would they think that, Sam? Why would they think that? Why would they think they should govern the Gaza Strip? Isn't that kind of weird? The answer is because one of the feelings that Israelis have is that when Israel is there, it seems like there aren't terrorist attacks coming from that place, and then when Israel leaves, there are, right? They would argue that this happened in southern Lebanon. It's how Hezbollah was able to take over half the country. It's because Israel left. And they would argue this with the Gaza Strip, that the reason why Hamas was able to take over is because Israel disengaged in 2005.
Yeah, I agree. It's tragic what's happened, because I agree with you that they become jaded and they've become very comfortable with the idea of violence happening there in general, right? And I think it sucks. It sucks is an understatement. I think it's tragic, and like I don't know what. Truthfully, the situation is so fucked up that it just feels hopeless sometimes. But
it is hopeless, but it's because of people like the settlers in the West Bank. And then their opposites, people like Sam Seder, because they are incapable of engaging honestly with everything that's going on. People just like give their one telling, side of history, and then that's it. That's all you get. You get people talking about how, every single Palestinian is a bloodthirsty murderer from birth who has no reason whatsoever to hate Israelis, or you get people like Sam Seder who say, oh, I don't even know why any Israeli would ever hate any Palestinian. Like, everybody just wants to live in harmony. They just want a one-state solution where everybody's like kind and happy to each other.
It certainly does. But in the meantime, in this country, and we may not have the opportunity for a while, but we should cease all aid to Israel. We should stop protecting them in the UN. We should stop trying to pressure the ICJ and the ICC. That's,
Well, incidentally, I agree with all those things too. I think that that's the most we can do as a country to try to stop the war, and it's something that we should be doing. And I think Kamala Harris would have been a lot more likely to do something on that front. Certain
we won't know.
We can't know, and that's the great thing.
Well, listen, I appreciate the time. I got to go because I'm supposed to have dinner for my child. But,
well, I'll say this. This was way more combative than I expected. Ultimately, though, I don't think that what do we disagree on? I mean, I don't know. I don't even know. Maybe I see too much good in the Israeli population. I mean, I don't know what's ultimately the disagreements here.
Well, I mean, look, I'm not, it's largely, in my mind, impossible to really fully assess. I mean, yes, there was a protest last year, 500,000 people who wanted the hostages back. In the
ceasefire.
I don't know if there's been. Well, they wanted the hostages back. I don't know.
It's not a magic wand. It's a ceasefire.
Yeah, and they got a ceasefire, and then the Israeli government broke it, and they.
Well, so hold on. Our disagreement is that I'm too optimistic about the Israeli citizenry.
I'm not here to adjudicate what.
I'm just trying to summarize our conversation. That's all.
Well, I mean, you summarize for you. I'll summarize for me. I think, it is what it is. And I think I don't, remember this conversation. We can put into AI and have it summarize it. But I'll
do that for you, and I'll let you know what it says.
All right,
we'll leave it to the robots.
Okay.
Sam, I do appreciate you calling in. I do value your input on all this, and I appreciate the conversation. I think it's good to have conversations like this, like open and honest, even if they're combative. And I think ultimately on the larger points we agree. But we managed.
Does the idea that the ceasefire protests are for Israeli hostages and not Gazan civilians hold any water in terms of relevancy / Israeli citizen sentiment, Destiny? Maybe a little bit. The reality is Israeli citizens probably don't like Palestinians very much. There are probably better arguments that you could even use if you really wanted to prove that, though, if you actually gave a fuck, right? Unless things have changed since I was there, right? The fact that all the workers in the West Bank basically had their work permits revoked was not good. The fact that if you were a Palestinian living in Israel, one of the 2 million Arab Palestinian Israelis, nobody hires you for work anymore. Jewish Israeli people don't want anything to do with you because they're so paranoid or mind-fucked over future terrorist attacks and shit, right? If you wanted to point to a bad thought among the population, you point to things like that. But if Jews are just these weird, fundamentally evil, racist people, then I don't know, whatever.
Managed to find things to fight about anyway. And that's what two Jews do, isn't it, Sam?
That happens. That's my understanding. Appreciate it. All right, take it easy, man.
Have a great time with your children at dinner there. Enjoy.
Thanks, I will.
Bye.
You too, bye.
That was way different than I thought it was going to be.
Oh,
But okay.
I thought it was interesting. I enjoyed that as a watcher.
Was I owned?
I don't think you were owned. I don't think anybody was owned. I think it was two people that are highly opinionated hashing it out. And I think
Can you debate Sam Seder on this shit? I don't know. Dude, Israel-Palestine debates make me want to kill myself. And also, I would never reach out for it. I mean, if he wanted to, he would, but I doubt he would on his own. I don't know. I don't have much of a desire for it.
personally like when people do that.
Yeah.
I don't get turned off by the combativeness.
Right.
Maybe it's that's the half Jewish part of me.
But the truthfully is like, again, on the larger points, we agree. That's why I take cross with this issue of being like, he's a genocide supporter, he's a fucking baby killer, and all this insane. He goes, Sam, you never heard of hyperbole? Yeah, I've heard of hyperbole. It's fucking.
You're the king of hyperbole.
Yeah. So I mean, like. Is my downfall that I have too much faith or I have too much optimism in the Israeli citizenry? Maybe I guess that's where we differ. That seemed to be where we were differing the most. I don't know.
I think you're right to identify that as yeah. And I mean, Sam is older and he's in his 50s or something, and so maybe he's just more jaded.
It is shocking how little Sam seems to know about the details of the conflict because Jewish people, the diaspora, don't give a fuck about Israel. They don't know much about it because they don't care much about it, which is fair. Also, like he's American. Sam is an American, right?
Yeah, he definitely is more jaded. There's no question about that, and rightfully so, right? Rightfully so.
But yeah, I enjoyed watching that.
I will say, as a Jewish person, that the contentious point in the argument of the clip of Hasan, it kind of shocked me, to be honest.
I was a little, to be honest, and as much as I love Sam, he was being very obtuse, in my opinion, when trying to talk about that clip to avoid criticizing Hasan, which is fine. I understand he doesn't want to get into that game, right? Of being on record, being like, oh yeah, Hasan shouldn't have said that or whatever, right? But ultimately, obviously, I greatly disagree with him. And I think it's funny how he talks about how dangerous it is for me to call out anti-Semitism or how ridiculous it is for me to weaponize it like that. It's like when at the same time.
It's a weird thing because you don't really want to like.
Jesus.
I understand the impulse to just want to have a conversation with Sam and keep it with like the here and now of, your beliefs and everything. But, the degree to which the harassment that.
Why does every debate skip over the fucking question, what else should Israel have done? Even now, they touched on it and just kind of moved on. Because the thing that anti-Semites don't ever want to concede on is there is nothing that Israel could have done. It's just like when white people in the U.S. got mad at the kneeling over the football shit, the BLM like take a knee stuff, and they got super ass pained over it, right? Conservatives have said so many times, right? Stop rioting, stop being violent, find a way to protest that doesn't involve burning down cities, destroying shit. And they're like, oh, okay, what if we take a knee during, NFL? You destroy my football! Like, the reality is they don't want you to protest. They don't want to see it anywhere. They don't want to have to be reminded of it. They don't give a fuck. They just don't want you to protest. Same way for the Israeli shit. They don't want Israel to do anything. They want it to cease to exist as a state, but they are too weak or pussy to actually just own that opinion for whatever reason.
That you and Hila have experienced over the last couple of years, like it is part of the story, and like,
Yeah, it's true.
I don't know, it's tricky because like
Hard to
I get the impulse to like not want to get into it, but like that is a component of all of this. That
Well, and unfortunately, whatever Sam's been peppered with before the debate I've seen is his co-hosts telling him that I'm obsessed with Hasan, that I'm having a mental health break, that I'm a genocidal
shit, is
maniac,
that
all this kinds of
true?
stuff.
I haven't seen that.
That's kind of without having any of the backstory. That's the flavor he's coming in with. But ultimately, I find
If Emma's doing that.
I don't want to speak ill of Sam, right? I appreciate him coming and having an honest conversation with me. I was also disappointed by his response to that specific line of questioning, Zach. I share that with you. And I think the way that he was hand-waving away anti-Semitism as like...
Diasporites seem to be the least educated but the loudest voices about the state of affairs of their home countries. It kind of sucks that they basically tokenize themselves for white progressives struggling with white guilt and basically end up mudding the waters of very... Well, I mean, like Jewish people by their culture are going to be more akin to like views that basically try to displace white people with brown. Oh no, wait. Be more progressive with their politics. I think just in general, maybe actually almost exclusively because of the fact that Jews seem to value higher education so much. That's just going to put them in a more progressive light. And so, if you are a progressive in the United States, you're probably going to be a Palestinian supporter because of oppressor-oppressee dynamics or whatever other bullshit. So, if that's the case, that you're a Jew and you're in the United States and you don't know much about Israel, then you probably are going to be, pro-Palestinian. So it's just like a probability thing.
It doesn't matter that people are discriminating against Jewish people in America because of what's happening in Gaza. And it's like, well, first of all, two different issues, kind of. Whatever's happening in Gaza is one thing, and whatever rise into anti-Semitism we're seeing in America is a whole different fucking thing with its own set of problems. And believe it or not, they're both bad.
And that rise of anti-Semitism in the United States is also proof that it's probably just a little bit more than anti-Zionism that's at play here. Because if it was just anti-Zionism, why would there ever be anti-Semitism in response to actions from Israel and other parts of the world, right?
Bad. To the same extent? Obviously not, right? Obviously one has an immediate, horrible effect in Gaza right now. And the threat of anti-Semitism is an amorphous, nebulous thing that's like hard to measure and hard to say. And Jews, our whole life in America, people call it the golden age of Judaism, is this time, the past 50, 60, 70 years in America for Jewish people. It's hard to tell, right? You go, oh, what is anti-Semitism? What isn't? And when you're allies with people that, in my opinion, are spreading dangerous ideas, like Hasan is. I think Sam, who grew up in I think he sees too much good in Hasan, and I see too much good in the Israeli population. And hey, who's to say who's right? I'm right.
Yeah, like
oh, there he is.
In response to what Zach was saying, like when I first saw that clip, I didn't see it that way, but I'm not Jewish, so I found it interesting that you guys are having this conversation. To give both perspectives. One thing I kind of wish is that you guys both...
Like, you're not going to see it that way because just looking at one thing, you're never going to see it that way. But that's kind of how this works, right? You usually have to start to see a collection of stuff before you get an understanding of like, oh, okay, hold on, I understand what this guy's talking about, right?
Find what Zionism is. Like what you...
Yeah.
Because I feel like that's a big... point in all of this.
I agree, and it's such a stupid word because it has such a broad meaning. And like when Hasan says Zionist tendencies, that's why I think it's important to ask Sam, who I think is avoiding the question, frankly, because he knows that it looks bad. He doesn't want to answer it. So he responds by saying like, oh, you think this matters? Let's not talk about the specifics of what Zionist tendency is, because clearly Hasan's not anti-Semitic. Obviously, he doesn't have the context. And by the way, I'm still willing to give Hasan the benefit of the doubt that he's not anti-Semitic, right? But once again, as I've stated, yeah, I'm willing to. But at what I've said previously is that. He's very comfortable fostering a community that is blatantly hateful and anti-Semitic. He's comfortable expressing these ideas irresponsibly the way he communicates, which is what that clip displays, I think. So while I don't think he's anti-Semitic, I think he's responsible for perpetuating a lot of it. And I think Sam's refusal to answer questions like what does Zionist tendency means was, a way of him avoiding answering a difficult question that would impugn Hasan. Because frankly, there's really nothing positive to say about what he did. And so Sam took I guess, if you want to talk about debate, and Sam's a great debater, right? Everybody knows that. He's a great conversationalist. He doesn't really get the best stuff. Nobody really gets the best of him in conversation. I mean, the only way he could really take that on was to be like, it doesn't matter, in the totality of things. So that's the road he took, and I was disappointed by that as well. But at the end of the day, I knew it was unlikely that he was going to say a bad thing about Hasan. I was specifically trying not to even go there. In fact, when I showed him that first video of me talking about my views, I was kind of surprised that he actually had found something to criticize in it. I had said,
what was it? I don't remember.
Let me rewatch that clip, because I was quite surprised. Like, from the beginning, this conversation did not go how I thought it would at all. And it started with this clip here. Let me see. They're liars and bad faith weirdos. So here's what I'll say about Israel, okay? Listen, this isn't the first time I've said it, and I'll say it many more times. The cabinet is run by genocidal maniacs, okay? They're led by Netanyahu, who should resign in disgrace and go to prison for being a war criminal, okay? He's made a coalition of the most radically conservative freaks that don't represent, by the way, the majority of Israelis. He was saying that there's this talking point that I've seen percolating on the left, which is that, to put it kind of, to summarize it crassly, that Israelis are evil, basically. I mean, to put it crassly, right? That's kind of what he's saying, is that the majority of Israelis just want civilians to die. I mean, that's kind of what he said, and he didn't even deny it. I think that's insane.
That's an insane
And
position
especially
to have.
the context of this clip being 2 days after October 7th, I think it was, the sentiment was a lot different.
Maybe I'm a little Temi Dank, but do you think people like Hasan are actually anti-Semitic or just anti-Israeli? From what I've seen, it seems like he just hates Israeli people. I would say that people like Hasan are anti-Semitic, but it's just in effect. I don't think a hatred for the Jewish people necessarily drives him. It's more just that everything that Israel stands for and it being a Western country is necessarily going to make him, basically, he'll be indistinguishable from an anti-Semite.
Before and after and during and now, the sentiment in Israel changed a lot. So when I said that, I think it was more accurate. I think it's still accurate, but obviously there is a huge problem in Israel of people being, complicit and comfortable with what the military is doing.
Right, I hear what you're saying. Yeah, and I don't want to represent myself as an expert on any of this at all. So
expert opinion, Dan.
No, it's definitely not. Just from what I recall reading, is that prior to October 7th, support for giving the Palestinians a state in Israel was at basically an all-time high, and that has cratered since October 7th, which is the great, one of the great tragedies of this whole situation, and kind of dark irony of it is it now feels like we are further than ever from some sort of peaceful solution to all this. So.
Oh, and then the thing that we didn't discuss is that most of the peaceniks.
Let me real-time fact check myself on that, because that's a big claim.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm right, but I seem to remember seeing polls that generally over the course of the last 10 years or so, support for.
I'm speaking not just from stats, which I
Bro, Hasan is in Ethan's chat saying he's scared Ethan will bring destiny.
have looked up and seen polls and stuff.
Wait, what?
But empirically, I lived in Tel Aviv for 5 years and know what the people are like there, right? And obviously, it's a progressive city.
That's likely one of the more progressive pockets.
It is.
in the
It's like
country.
Los Angeles or New York is.
Right.
It's a progressive city.
Wait, is this chat live or is the chat tracking where the stream VOD is?
Right, so obviously they'll be more inclined to want peace, but ultimately what happened.
Everybody's
on
saying
October
Hasan
7th
in
that we
here.
Talk about
Oh no,
is that
it
a
is
ton of the
live.
peace activists, most of them,
Lameo Hasan, the
lived
Cope.
on the southern border specifically so they could help people in Gaza. They would drive people across the border to the hospital. They would
Literally
help
nobody
people get
brings
to
up
and from
Destiny
work.
except
They were
Hasan.
advocating,
Destiny's got nothing
they
to
were
do with
doing what
this
they could as
conversation.
individuals to help facilitate peace. And many of them, you hear their stories time and time again, were just murdered, slaughtered by Hamas. And I think that's part of what really jaded the Israeli public too, is look what happens when you want to support peace. Obviously that's not, I don't think, the right conclusion, but that was their conclusion. It's all the people that wanted peace were murdered by Hamas.
See, I have, friends or family even that will say that they don't believe there's an innocent Israeli. And I think, obviously, stuff like that is super dangerous. And
I agree.
I'll never
Thank
agree
you.
with that. But in terms of, the Pew research is often what's referenced. And again, Sam brought that up, that there was only 19% of people in May in Israel from the
He put a chat in saying, "Don't bring on a banned person or have to leave."
poll who thought that it went too far. And
I got to see that poll.
Help me with the best argument to give against people saying that Israel is simply an occupier and should leave Palestine. I mean, ask them, how did the Arabs get into Palestine? I mean, it's a stupid argument.
yeah,
That was from May?
Yeah, it was from May 2024. This is often referenced.
It's a little old, but I don't know if that's changed. Let's see.
Well, it's May tomorrow, so it's basically a year old, right?
Yeah.
I think I totally agree that the public is way too comfortable and complicit in all this. I think the